Ladies and gentlemen, please rise to receive your Chairman, Vice Chairman and Chief Executive.
Good evening, everybody. Unfortunately, my chaplain is unavoidably delayed, so we cannot start with our usual prepared prayer slot. Fortunately, Councillor Rob Adams has agreed to deputise and offer a very impromptu prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll do my best. Our thoughts, of course, this evening among members and staff here at Wychavon is for our leader, and we all wish him a speedy recovery. I think he is getting there. And I look forward to the day when he comes back, because our deputy's lost her voice this week, shouting at all us on the board. We are grateful, obviously, to the staff here at Wychavon and all the people that we engage with, trying to bring about the business of Wychavon, working with our immediate partners, the county, and let's think of Worcester City and Malvern Hills, which hopefully in times to come we will do more. So our thoughts, and I will pause just for a minute over our thoughts towards Richard, and hope he'll soon be back amongst us. I pause and then we'll say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, shall we go? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Right, and moving on to the agenda, we move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do I have any declarations of interest? Looking around, I don't see any hands, so we'll take that as no. On then to item 3, which is apologies for absence, Mel.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillors Hartley, Herdman, Knight and Morris.
Okay, thank you. And then on to minutes of the previous meeting, which have been circulated as part of the agenda pack, so I hope you've all had a chance to read them and agree that they are a true and accurate record. I am happy to propose those. Councillor Wilkins?
I'm happy to second those, Chair.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments? In that case, now we'll go straight on to then all those in favour of approving those as a true and accurate record.
That's carried, Chair.
And moving, excuse me, moving on in that case to Chairman's announcements, which I do have in my pack here. It seems like a long time since our last normal council meeting, so some of these announcements go back quite a long way. But first of all, I'd like to start by welcoming our newest member, Matthew Winfield, who's the new councillor for Bretford and Nottingham following the by-election last week. I'm sure Matthew will have a lot to contribute to the work of the council, and I'd encourage everyone to help make him feel at home here. So welcome, Matthew, and hope you enjoy your first meeting. On a completely different note, as you all are already aware, our leader, Councillor Richard Morris, was taken ill with a heart attack a couple of weeks ago. The good news is that Richard is back home, he is recovering and has promised to take the advice of his medical team and not rush back to work too soon. In the meantime, Councillor Emma Kersey, as Deputy Leader, will take on the responsibilities of Leader, and Councillor Paul Middleborough will take the lead on matters relating to local government reorganisation. I'm sure that everybody here wishes Richard a rapid and full recovery. On the subject of local government reorganisation, just a reminder that we have another special council meeting next month on the 19th of November, where we will finalise our response to the government that we discussed last time. I've also been asked to mention progress on the South Worcestershire Development Plan. I won't go into the details on that, as it's all in, excuse me, all in the most recent copy of Vic's Roundup. But the good news is that things are proceeding well, it's going according to plan, and it's been confirmed that when the plan is adopted, we will have a demonstrable 5-year land supply, which is very good news, as I'm sure everybody involved in planning applications will be pleased to hear. As far as civic events are concerned, I'm not going to go through all of them, as I've said enough already. There is a full list attached to your agenda. But I do particularly want to mention the Wychavon Community Star Awards. So far, I've had the privilege of presenting 4 Community Stars, and they've all been an absolute delight. Starting with an award presented in front of Morrison's in Evesham, which was a salubrious venue for an award presentation, and then interrupting a coach tour of the Worcestershire Historic Churches Trust at St Nicholas's Church in Peopleton, then gathering beside a pond in Droitwich, and then a slot at the Pershaw Inspire Awards ceremony at the Banking Hall on Friday last week. Each one of those is a reminder of just how important our volunteer community is to us. And I have to say that I have been incredibly impressed with the massive commitment of all of those involved. And those 4 are just the start. I've got an entire spreadsheet of dates, times, places, and recipients to come, so you'll be getting updates on this for at least the next couple of meetings, probably. Anyway, on to item 6, public participation. I believe we have no participation.
No, we have no questions.
Right, in that case, we go on to petitions and notices of motion. Again, I believe we have no petitions from members of the council, but we do have a notice of motion from members of the council. So we have one motion proposed by Councillor Dan Boatwright-Green and seconded by Councillor Liz Turier. So, Councillor Boatwright-Green, if you'd like to present your motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. This motion is asking the Police and Crime Commissioner to reverse £350,000 of cuts to a £204 million budget. Might seem like a small amount and not worth mentioning, but our PCSOs are the face of the police in most of our communities. And while the powers of a PCO are not the same as a police officer, their skills in working with our communities, helping to de-escalate and work together, to negotiate and gather intelligence, to prevent crime and combat crime should never be underestimated. Here in Pershaw, if I need support with an issue, they will be my first port of call. They know the history, they've worked with us on key issues, and they know who needs to be involved in solving a problem. In our rural areas, like where we have few police stations, distances can be long. PCSOs are frequently the only visible policing presence we see, and this was not a decision made with our communities. There was no consultation and no discussion when the cuts from 10 p.m. to 8 p.m. were made. Anyone in Pershaw would have said that the police presence on our streets was fundamental to what we wanted from the service. We have, of course, long argued that there should be an open police station with access for the community here in our growing town. The Police and Crime Commissioner has made it clear that he disagrees. So taking away a presence on our streets between 8 and 10 p.m. when antisocial behaviour does occur seems completely counterintuitive. Also, having to solely rely on a response from Evesham or Worcester, where the population is larger, the nighttime economy is bigger, and more issues can arise, raises concerns about how quickly a response can occur. Whereas our local PCSOs have been based in Pershaw until 10 p.m, we will now have the added distance and therefore increased risk from 8 p.m. It's later in the evening where we see certain issues, whether it is in Abbey Park with persistent issues with drug dealing and where there are concerns about exploitation of younger members of our community. And the PCSOs are regularly in patrol. Residents want to see more of this, not less. And as someone who owns a hospitality business, knowing we have a team based in Pershaw gives us confidence that we can get the support if needed. And when the PCSOs are on patrol, and we do see them, it is nice to see them. And we do sometimes have to provide a comfort stop because our public toilets are not always open until 10 p.m. The Police and Crime Commissioner has argued that these changes move resources to allow focus on daytime policing when more crimes are committed. but different crimes happen at different times of the day. Burglary, for instance, is more likely to happen during the day when people are at work, whereas antisocial behaviour, particularly public disturbance, tends to be more common at night, especially after dark. By removing the PCSAs from the street, are we not making it easier to commit disturbances? Not that I'm suggesting anyone in this room would. And also adding to the feeling of being unsafe by the general public. Finally, I'm not going to pretend that funding is working. National government funding for local government and the fire and police services has not kept pace with need. And our increasing population will see towns built, but where will their local fire station be, or their police station? How far will that be? In communities that are growing, we should see an increase in funding for our services, not a reduction. That's why this motion also asks we voice our concerns to our local MPs and call for their support in requesting from the government an increase in funding for neighbourhood policing in our rural communities. Therefore, I hope you'll support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis-Tier, I understand you wish to second this.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I first heard about these potential cuts a few months ago on one of the new housing estates in Whittington on a walkabout with the local PCSO, Platform Housing and members of the Parish Council. In fact, it was the PCSO who mentioned it as we were discussing potential antisocial behaviour and various problems. Our immediate reaction was that it would be a mistake to stop random visits, drive-throughs, as this was an important deterrent measure, especially as young adults are used to getting mostly together between 8 and 10 in the evening. We've had 2 knife attacks in this estate since I was a councillor. The last one, 2 teenage girls, about a month ago. In Drakes Broughton, there are often complaints of drug use and youngsters getting together in spare green spaces and generally being a nuisance and taking drugs. We all have these new estates, which lack cohesion and are full of people who do not know each other. They've come from all over the place. And they lack, as yet, it takes a village to bring up a child ethos. By reducing the security blanket of occasional community policing, it will only get worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rob Adams, I believe you wish to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think all of you that have been on Wychavon some years now know that I don't play party politics and I don't intend to do it tonight. It was a very close call seeing where Councillor Boatwright Green and Councillor Turrier came forward with their wording, and that wording I have heard pretty well through West Mercia. Similar sort of wording was used at Herefordshire and Telford and Wrekin and Shropshire and Bronsgrove and all the way through. I see where you're coming from, and the wording of the motion I want to put in front, I will read out now. The Council resolves to request the Chief Constable, working with the Police and Crime Commissioner, to be flexible in determining the working hours of the PCSO to reflect different seasonal pressures and to show visible policing in our towns and villages during shopping hours. And to the Leader of the Council to ask our MPs to seek assurance from the Home Secretary that sparsity factors will be increased in any police settlement for the neighbourhood policing. And 3, welcome the opportunity to discuss this and other issues with the Police and Crime Commissioner when he attends the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 14th of January. I'd like to come back on those, but I presume, Mr. Chairman, you'll take a seconder on that.
Yes, I will. Councillor Leonard Robinson, Anthony, you wish to second that proposal?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second Rob's amendment. I can understand how this has come about, and initially people thought, oh, we're just not going to have any police out of hours. But that isn't the case, and particularly like myself, representing a largely rural area, they will still patrol the police. They will be out and about. It's what they do. Whether they're PCSOs or the regular team from Evesham, they still come out. When people had burglaries, it was the Evesham police who came out. It wasn't the PCSOs. So I think speaking to the Chief Constable and getting the flexible word is the one I like. So I'm very happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go into debating the amendment and the motion itself, Councillor Nicola Morris, I believe wishes to just raise a brief point of order.
So I do, thank you, Chair. In October 2024, I requested that we had a rule change exactly for this reason. This is a complicated issue, and in the interest of us collaborating more as councillors, I think it is important that any amendments that are being proposed are discussed with the person who has raised the motion. Now, unfortunately, I'm looking at the email I sent at the time. I didn't follow this point up, but I actually formally requested that, as with notice of motions, where there is a deadline, I therefore propose that with a notice of motion, petitions and questions, we have a procedural deadline for amendments to notice of motions of a minimum of 4 hours prior to the start of the meeting. The response I did receive was that in the meantime, whilst that was being considered, we would get the amendments emailed, and I'm pretty sure none of us have received that. And it's not that I want to be difficult. What I want to say is that maybe a compromise could have been reached. We're now going to end up debating this where we've got two polarised arguments, and I personally find it very difficult then to decide how to vote, because obviously we do want flexibility, we do want a discussion, but also we want to be reassured that our communities are not compromised by this. Anyway, I'm sorry, that was more than a point.
Yeah, thank you. Your points are noted. I'm not going to respond in detail to him because I appreciate you. I will just say briefly that an actual change to the rules would require a change to the Constitution, since the rules are written into the Constitution. Given that we're going to be abolished in 3 years' time anyway, I'm not entirely sure that the complexity of going through that change would be worth it. I do take your point about there's no reason why people can't give you advance notice out of the goodness of their heart, and I'm sure that point will be taken on board by those considering amendments in future. But we will now go on to actually debating the insurance. And Councillor Liz Tucker, I know you've been gesticulating at me for a while.
I also wanted to raise a notice of motion. I don't mean a notice of motion, I mean a policy. I don't understand this is an amendment. There is no reference saying that the whole of the text is to be removed and your amendment to be replacing it. If that was the case, then surely it is a wrecking amendment and therefore invalid, because it would have wiped out the entire text. There isn't any statement about removing the text after the words in the original notice of motion that are talking about this council resolves. That would be followed by our 1, 2, 3, and you have your own 1, 2, 3 in your notice of motion. Personally, I would have been okay with adding the 3 paragraphs of your amendment to our original, but I cannot see that this is other than a wrecking amendment. And it is extremely vague, and I think that, well, shall I say, the way in which notice of motion had to be done at county were far more precise than this, and I would welcome clarity, because we seem to be in a position whereby you can wreck the entire notice of motion without debate, other than being moved and seconded, to move on to whatever it is you want to say to wreck it. Now, that can't be correct, and I would like some serious advice on it.
Thank you. Misha will answer that question.
So, Councillor Adams, my understanding is that in terms of the notice of motion, everything on the notice of motion put forward by Councillor Boatwright Green, up to the point on this council resolves, remains as is, but your amendment is below that and is set out as this council resolves these 3 points rather than the 3 points that were in the original. Can you confirm that, please?
I'm not 100% sure, Misha, what I've done. I don't want to wreck anything that Councillor Boatwright Green has put forward. I just feel there's some elements in what I said. For instance, Dan speaks about the Police and Crime Commissioner. This is an operational matter. It is down to the Chief Constable mainly on this. I don't want to wreck on what he's saying. All I want to do is simplify it and make those 3 points. There's no, in what Dan said, there was nothing about overview and scrutiny. I grew up on overview and scrutiny. I was the first chairman of that. And I know how the heights when Councillor Dyke took over in 2012 from me, he took it to more heights. And then again, Charlie makes a super job now. To get that to scrutiny would be valuable, I think. Councillor Robinson said about the flexibility, and that's what it's all about. I think there can be a compromise there. That have the flexibility as they can go after 8 o'clock at night and in some points. I don't want to wreck anything to counter Boatwright. I just want other discussion and another form of wording that has gone around the police and crime panel in other authorities.
Can I just come back? Because I think we've got clarity now that the entire text of our notice of motion, apart from after resolves to, is still the text on the table. I think it would be very helpful if the amendment was written to make that clear, rather than us having to work it out afterwards. I also can't see why the two sets of resolutions are contradictory in any way. So I can't see why they can't be accepted together. The whole point behind this notice of motion was the anxiety and upset felt, certainly in the villages and parishes, I can't speak for the town, but I think it's the case in the town, for losing the CPOs, who are probably better known than the police people in the villages and the rural areas. And there seems to be an assumption that wicked things don't happen after 8 o'clock, and that's usually when they start.
Maybe I could just briefly, Councillor Middleton, I'll let you speak in a moment. Just to clarify my understanding of this, which I'm having confirmed from both sides of me up here on the top desk, everything in the original motion, the 4 bullet points under this council notes that, and the 3 bullet points under this council believes that, are left unchanged. The amendment does not seek to change any of that text. The amendment simply seeks to change the text following on from this council resolves to by replacing the resolutions, there are the 3 paragraphs in the original motion with the 3 paragraphs in the amendment. So if the amendment is passed, the substantive motion will then be the original first 2 sections of the text and with the different resolution at the bottom. Am I making myself at least partly clear on that? In that case, I will go on to Councillor Middleton, who's indicated he wishes to speak.
Thank you. If I can talk about the amendment, and I think it's important that we understand the context which, first of all, the 4 bullet points are made in, and I think that's an important factor. And I go back to the Police and Crime Panel, which met on the 21st of July this year, when representatives from all of the councils which are subscribed to the West Mercia meet, and I've gone back to the minutes, and these are the minutes of that meeting, and it says, and if you don't mind me quoting the Police and Crime Commissioner, on the issue of PCSOs within West Mercia, the PCC, that's a Crime Commissioner, wishes to correct some misinformation that was circulating within communities and raising concerns with the public regarding a proposed change in their hours of work. He explained there was no reduction to the number of hours work proposed for PCSOs, but instead just an adjustment of the times when PCSOs would be on duty. And I think that's reflected in the first part of the amendment, when it's saying that flexibility, because I think flexibility requires policing at different times in different seasons, different times whether we're on GMT or British Standard Times, because hours do change, and from time to time the weather has an impact, and perhaps those of us who've lived in Northern Ireland during June, July and August actually know that the weather has a significant impact on community behaviour. And the PCSO went on to say, as a result of saving options available for consideration, principally focused on support options. So any reductions which were set in that budget were proposed for reductions in police staffing administrative posts. If it's getting away with bureaucracy, that's a good thing. And can I just say about those minutes, the representatives of all those councils, and Rob said he didn't want to bring politics into it. There is nowhere near a majority of Conservatives on that police and crime panel. And those minutes were approved by representatives from Telford and Wrekin, a lot of Labour representatives there, from Shropshire, Green and Liberal Democrats, Herefordshire Conservatives and Worcestershire. So they understood the position, and the point is that we're putting forward here flexibility, and that's for the Police and Crime Commissioner can talk about flexibility with the Chief Constable, but it is an operational matter, and the Police and Crime Commissioner does not interfere in operational matters. He can make suggestions, but he's not involved in operational matters there. Secondly, it is about funding, because in a way there was a cut in PCSO's funding, and who brought that in? The person who put national insurance contributions up, and that is an impact, and that's why the second part of the 3 bullet points that we put forward tonight are there, because we want to seek assurances from the Home Secretary that within the formulas for sparsity factors that they are given additional weighting which will cover the point about PCSOs. And I think we've always also got to remember the powers of PCSOs. PCSOs do not have the same powers as a police officer. So if a PCSO is out, what broadly can a PCSO do? They can ask somebody's name and address. They can't demand it, they can ask their name and address. And if they don't get their name and address, they then have to call a police officer. So the important thing actually for the antisocial behaviour in the dark is for a police officer to actually be there with the PCSO. So I think we've actually refined the final part of your notice of motion, and I think that's refined to reflect the actual case and to strengthen what we want for our policing. And it's good to see the Police and Crime Commissioners coming to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. But flexibility and the Chief Constable to do it operationally and flexible.
Thank you. Councillor Jodie Arnold.
Thank you. I'd just like to say the original notice of motion, I thought it was a really strong stance on what we all believe, that we do need extra funding within our police. If anything, we actually need investment within our police forces. It's a shame to see hours stripped away and have to use the term flexibility when actually we could just have those hours in the first place and not talk about flexibility. Let's just stick to the hours, or if not, increase them. Why aren't we increasing them? So that's the first point. I like the fact that the original notice of motion takes a stance, a strong stance, and that we put that forward. The amendment, it just feels a bit wishy-washy. Let's talk. Let's mull it over. Let's not give an opinion, really. And I'm fed up of talking, actually. And I think Rob Adams will agree with me. We met up with our young people of Wychavon. So all the schools got together, and they all voted that they would appoint Rob as leader. And the reason he was appointed was because he took such a strong stance on our policing, that they did not feel safe, and that Rob took a really hard stance against knife crime. That our young people in Wychavon want to feel safe when they go out, whether that's in the dark, because in wintertime they still want to go outside. Whether it's dark or not, they want to feel safe on the streets. And our PCSOs are fundamental in making our young people feel safe. Seeing that presence on the streets when they're in our towns, in our villages, makes young people feel safe. And Rob, you took a really strong stance against that, and they loved it. And that's what they wanted us to know was important to them. So to see any reduction in PCSOs on the streets, time-wise, I think will be detrimental to our young people and how they feel safe. So I reject the amendment to the notice of motion. It's far too wishy-washy, far too let's talk, let's not have any action, and actually let's stick to the original notice of motion. Let's be strong and represent our young people of Wychavon.
Okay. Councillor Adams, did you want to come in at this point and respond specifically to those points? I have got other speakers lined up from over this side of the chamber. I will get to you. Anyway.
For Jodie and what she said, that was very kind. Yes, it may be a reduction in recommendations here. I want all our members to be clear, and myself included, what we are debating now, because I think it's simpler that we do what I have requested and support the amendment, and you'll be talking to the amendment. Now, if that fails, and that's what you all want, that's fine, and you go back to the original one. I believe we should be talking towards the amendment which I have proposed, and that's standard procedure, Mr. Chairman. If you deal with one, deal with that, vote for it or against it, and then you go back to the original. So can you confirm that's what we are speaking about now as speakers come forward? And I'd like to make a comment myself at some stage.
Yes, we are now discussing the amendment to the proposal and whether or not to agree the amendment. So I was under the impression that Councillor Arnold was directly addressing that point, but yeah. So, Councillor Liz Tucker, you had your hand up.
Thank you. First of all, I think we've been told that John Campion is not reducing the hours, it's just reducing the times. And I don't think there's any disagreement about that aspect, although Paul obviously thinks I've got it wrong. The whole point is that 8 o'clock and later into the evening can be quite a tense time, whether it's in a sort of dark part of a village or if it's in the towns when it gets lively. And although it was said that PSOs are only names and can't ask for names, well, they can ask, but they don't have to get given, and it was quite dismissive, I thought, of this PCSOs. I think people need to realise that they are actually much valued by residents because they get to know them, and they don't get to know the police, who are obviously far too busy. So they are an important reassurance for the public. And the purpose of this notice of motion was to bring forward the strong feedback that we're getting from residents, and I know that Town Council and other people have been really arguing about it, that it would be a big loss not to have the PSOs at that later stage of the evening. And to have them working the same hours at a different time of day is not what it's about, because it's the evenings when things can really happen, and reassurance has already been shown by the work of the PCSOs. So I don't know what Paul's about to correct me on, but bear in mind that this is about voicing what our residents strongly want. It's not to do with whether we agree what the higher-ups in the police commissioning have agreed among themselves. It's to do with the residents and their needs. Thank you.
Councillor Middleborough, am I taking it from your something that you've decided not to come back? Okay, in that case, we will move on to Councillor Dan Birch.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think any of us in this room particularly think that we don't need more policing at night. I think everybody's in agreement that, of course, we need more policing at night. You know, when it comes to the emergency services, the two that get most calls at night, fire service and the police, there are more crimes, there are more fires at night. Nobody disputes that. But from my understanding, what the amendment is about is a procedural thing in terms of what we do with the fact that we do need more policing. We all agree that we need more policing and how we go about getting it. Now, I've never fully agreed with the Police and Crime Panel in the same way that I really don't agree with the Fire Authority. I don't particularly believe that politicians have done an excellent job in running our emergency services generally, and that's dismissive of any party. But ultimately, there's only one person in this room that I know of that's ever served as an assistant police and crime commissioner, and that's the gentleman sat beside me. Councillor Middleborough has a far greater understanding of the police, I would argue, than the majority of us in this room. And as such, I think his input into this amendment was crucial. And what he is proposing is based on his experience and knowledge of the police force and how in which we can go about enacting it. He's somebody who's worked with a lot of the neighbouring local authorities in bringing about change, and therefore I think that as a council we should put our trust and faith in the fact that we have somebody here with a lot of experience and knowledge who we should trust when it comes to accepting this amendment and taking it forward in the best way possible so that we can get change enacted.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett-Green.
I think I described this as soggy when I first saw it. It's not bad, it's soggy. I mean, it says a few things, it has very little conviction. Point 2 sort of says what I was going to say, but doesn't really say it. And I deliberately didn't mention party politics in this motion. I made the point of not doing it. Because if I was writing a political motion about the Police and Crime Commissioner, it would be to bin it. Get the politicians out of policing. It would be my immediate reaction, in the same way that I have fought tooth and nail to make sure that the politicians are as far away from the fire service as we can keep them. Because the second they're involved, we end up with these conversations. And I am in no way dismissing anyone being an assistant PCC, but the very fact that that is a political position means that it comes with a political opinion. Whether we like it or not, we have people who run from political parties trying to win it. And I have to say, there's more Conservative county councillors in the assistant and deputy and PCC positions than there are at County Hall at the moment. So I'd be very wary of talking about the fact that this is a political motion. At the end of the day, the PCC determines the budgets, but somehow have little operational oversight. The budgets were determined by them. This is not a good system. I'm not always massively interested in making political points, which is why I've waited for you to make the points, so I can then make them. I've actively said that we need to make sure that we do what is in the best interest of our communities, and our communities have said they do not like this. This just doesn't make a lot of sense, really, because what we've just said here, I'm very confused as to why I've been told that there'll be no police after 8 p.m. or any accusations that there's no police after 8 p.m. I've deliberately avoided all of those things because I know they're not true. I haven't mentioned any of that. What I've discussed is very specifically about the PCSOs being in our communities until 10 p.m. That's exactly what I was talking about. And if a PC is based in Evesham or Worcester and not Pershore, how long is it going to take them to get here? And if there is something happening in Evesham, or there is something happening in Droitwich, I would obviously expect them to stay in those areas until that's fixed. Whereas a PCSO being here till 10 p.m. is actually useful and actually helps the community, and it's what we want. I'm really confused by this concept of flexibility being brought in, because you're talking about shopping hours. Well, I do my shopping when I do my shopping, and it depends where the shop is and when their hours work, because we live in a world now where we don't just go 9 till 4:30. So what shopping hours got to do with anything? Also, I own a hospitality business. We open till 11 o'clock. I know I have, but we actually like having our PCSOs about because actually we know that they help us in the community. So again, this idea of shopping hours, not massively relevant, not quite sure what that's referring to, are not really useful for a lot of us who are on our high streets. This amendment just in general just doesn't make a lot of sense. Seasonal pressures, yes, there are, but at the same time, not really very clear what you're saying by that. And we're not talking about the numbers of hours of work. The one thing I'm really cautious of is the talking about bureaucracy and the numbers of posts that have been removed from behind the scenes. 150 posts of backroom staff being removed means police officers now have to do more paperwork. They're the ones who've got to get more to the courts so that we can actually start getting people into court and convicted when they've done something wrong. I'm immediately worried when someone says that we've got rid of people doing the paperwork behind the scenes, because that tells me is people who really need to be out on the streets are now going to be tied to a desk.
Thank you. Deputy Leader.
Chairman, thank you. Councillor Arnold said that the amendment is wishy-washy. Based on what Councillor Boatwright-Green has just said, he's actually just reiterated the need for the amendment, which I'll come back to in a moment. But when you say that young people want to feel safe, we all want to feel safe. Everybody in our communities wants to feel safe. It's not just about young people feeling safe. We all want to feel safe. We all want to have as much police presence as we can have. We all understand that the government are the only people that are responsible for, in theory, reducing that by increasing national insurance payments. And I'm sure that Councillor Adams feels as strongly about knife crime now with this amendment as he did when he was at the debate with the young people. So there's most certainly nothing wishy-washy about the amendment. And as Councillor Middleborough has clarified for us, we're talking about PCSOs, whereas fundamentally what we all want, we want to feel safe with the most police coverage that we can possibly have. Now, Councillor Middleborough's stated to us exactly what a PCSO can and can't do. And therefore, I wonder if we're getting too in the issue about PCSOs. We are not chief constables. We don't know the best way to actually police our streets and our communities. And therefore, what this amendment does, going back to my point to Councillor Boatwright-Green, it reinforces that it actually puts it in the hands of people who are responsible for it. And that's why I don't believe that this motion is wishy-washy. It's actually putting back to the people that are responsible, which is fundamentally our job with a motion. If we want with a motion to actually achieve something, then we want it to be specific for the people that can do that. So, with the motion, the amendment goes back to the Chief Constable to work with the Police and Crime Commissioner. It then goes on to the Home Secretary, who obviously then has the say-so. But most importantly, we as Wychavon, as a district council, what do we have to oversee these things? We have our extremely well-run Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which the Police and Crime Commissioner is coming to on the 14th of January. So, I won't discuss Councillor Boatwright-Green's soggy, because I'm not really quite sure where he's going with that. But I would most certainly say that this is not wishy-washy. It is very specific, and it does what we as a council should be doing. And any motion that we put forward, it should have a specific outcome that we can have more influence and control over. And that's what I believe this amendment does.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Dawkes, sorry if you had your finger up earlier.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to voice what my residents would like. My residents are rural. They are very concerned. It's one of their major concerns is crime, but it's nighttime crime, early morning crime, hours of darkness crime. This is very focused on a little 8 to 10 window. It's not considering my residents at all.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Sims.
I think flexibility and talking is a good, easy get out, actually. What residents want is visibility, and that's what they say to me is visibility. Police community support officers, I think the clues in the title, are very good at intelligence gathering, which they have gathered intelligence in Broadway last Thursday, where there was an incident in the evening. Now, I'm not expecting, and I don't think we expect, PCSOs to be there every day all the time, but I think the point is that they are community support, and I think that is the important part, and the visibility.
Thank you. I have seen that your finger was in the air, Councillor Arnold, but you have already spoken on the amendment. If you can reply succinctly, because I think unless somebody else has anything else that they wish to say specifically on the amendment, then it's time to move to the vote on the amendment. But if you wish to exercise your right of reply, then you can do so.
It was just to say, really, I think it's our job to represent what our communities are asking for, which is why I said that the amendment doesn't go far enough to give our opinion to the powers that be on where we stand about this.
Okay, well, I think is it. I'm not seeing any other hands, so we will move on to the amendment. Councillor Adams, if you want to just sum up before we do that.
Wanted to just say one or two things, and I think we've had a good discussion on it anyway. The one thing about Wychavon district, it is recognised up and down the country, and I think we were only second against the Orkneys or someone, was it, in being the best place in England to live, work and bring up your families. And the one reason for that is, in that competition, it has always been recognised, is it is a wonderful, safe area to be and walk the streets. And we're really grateful for that. The fact is, even if it comes down, and I hope it won't, that we get some margin and the PCSOs can carry on later at night, that'll be great. But there will always be a police presence on the 101 number or 999 number. That's still going to be in place. Even if the PSOs aren't available, there will always be somebody available. This is a low crime area. I've got the figures here. Antisocial behaviour has been... The actual first quarter of this year, the antisocial behaviour numbers, which aren't massive by any manner of means for Wychavon, are lower than what they were 12 months ago. Just bear that in mind. And also bear in mind what we do as a council on our own back. Rob Rich, as all of you know, works out of Malvern, always here on a Wednesday morning. Look what they bring about. So the things like Neighbourhood Watch, what's the other one? Smart Water. Look what work they've been done in different areas. And the pocket, a small package of money, something going off the top of my head now, of about £120,000 we disperse around to do projects of our own. This is the community support that we have at our own meeting, and we work with Malvern. And one of the things, like the street pastors always comes to mind. What a wonderful job they do in Evesham and help the young people when they've perhaps had a drop more pop than they should have done, or whatever they do. But they're always there. The sanctuary housing scheme there to looks after when things have gone wrong, domestic things, you can put somebody into safe places, and all those little schemes that we do here in conjunction with Malvern Hills and Worcester City, South Worcestershire, our partnership, as we try and do. This is a very safe housing area that you live and work and bring up your family. That's recognised, and the policing will always be there, whatever time of the day. I hope you'll vote for the amendment. I hope you'll all come into scrutiny and support that in there. I will do my best to get the Chief Constable here and also John Campion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So we will now go to the vote on the amendment. Just to clarify, what we are voting for is to replace the section in the original motion starting with "This Council resolves to." The 3 paragraphs in that, we are voting to replace those 3 paragraphs with the paragraphs in the amendment. If passed, that will then become the substantive motion. Okay, so all those in favour of the amendment, please show. All those against? And any abstentions?
So that is carried, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so the amendment now becomes the substantive motion. I think a lot of you have already said pretty much what you already intended to say on that. Is there anybody who now wishes to speak on the substantive motion who has not, as opposed to debating the amendment? Councillor Liz Tucker.
I'm not really talking to the original motion. What I am saying is to illustrate that by taking your amendment immediately after the moving of the original notice of motion, there has been no proper discussion of the original notice of motion. It wiped it out, and I think that that's improper.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say on the new... Oh, Charles Tucker, sorry, I didn't see you.
Chairman, it's a procedural matter, really, and that is that I noticed that notices of motion are not always included in the minutes completely, but only the matter which is decided. Certainly that was the case in the last council meeting, and I think that it is a matter of important record that the full text of any notice of motion being put forward, proposed and seconded, is actually included in the minutes of the council, whatever is subsequently decided if there is an amendment. But for the point of record, we should have the full notice of motion as originally proposed being included in the minutes. Thank you.
I think that point is noted. Councillor Homer.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say that I understand the concern and the strength of feeling around all of this, but the reality is what do we have the opportunity to have influence on? And the one thing that we do have influence on is the fact that on the 14th of January, a senior policing representative will be here, and anybody is welcome to my committee to come and voice their strength of feeling, and I'd encourage everybody to do that. It's an opportunity to put these questions directly to them. I wouldn't stop anybody, whether they're a member or a non-member of the committee, putting a question to John Campion or whoever is representing the police on that evening, and I'd encourage everybody to do so. And the reality is we don't, that the purpose of that committee is to scrutinise, and we will, and we do a good job. So I do endeavour that if we have those people in front of us, we will do that, and I encourage everybody that's spoken tonight on this subject who have let their feelings be known to come to that meeting and let their feelings be known to those people as well.
Councillor Nicola Morris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be really quick. I think this graphically illustrates the point I made right at the start. There were good bits in both of them. Had the two people got round the table, discussed it, we could have ended up with a notice of motion that we could all unanimously agree on. And in these difficult times, that's what we need. We need collaborative approaches. We need to work together to resolve the crisis that we're facing at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. So in that case, you're talking about the window, not the... In that case, we will go to the vote on the substantive motion, which is now the motion as amended. So we're now voting for the text, which is the first two sections plus the changed final section. All those in favour? And any against? And Any abstentions? Okay, that's fairly clearly carried, I think. Right, well, thank you all for that interesting discussion. We will now move on to recommendations from the Executive Board. We've got a few items in recommendations from the Executive Board. What will happen is we will take, each of those will be proposed and seconded individually, but then we will take a single vote on them at the end. So if I can start by asking Councillor Rick Deller to tell us about the contaminated land inspection strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Hopefully this isn't as contentious. This is a very straightforward item. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Mark Cox from WRS, who's kindly sat through this meeting so far to be here to answer any technical questions that you may have. But effectively, this item is just a slight change as government policy has changed over the years since we first adopted it. We currently do not have any contaminated land in Wychavon. There are some on the database that are potential, but there is an extremely high bar when it comes to contaminated land. So, like I said, I'm happy to propose, but if there's any questions, I will direct to Mark.
Okay, and Councillor Beverley Hardman, and you wish to second this.
I'd like to second this. We review every 5 years, and this is an update. They're going to carry on collecting data, and if they need to, they're doing more inspections on land. So I second this.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments on that one? Well, I hope you enjoyed your meeting, Mark, given that you're not being questioned after all that. We'll move on then to the revocation of Worcester Road Air Quality Management Area in Wychbold, which again is Councillor Rick Deller.
Thank you. Mark, you might have a second chance to answer any questions this time. This is a very good news story. I may be biased, but I find Wychbold to be the crown jewel of Wychavon. We are delighted. What we have there, we have a fine post office, we have a wonderful park, a village hall, a wonderful school. So what more could we have? Clean air, that's what we could have. And that is what this is saying today. So we are revoking the Air Quality Management Area, or AQMA. And what effectively we're saying is that it hasn't reached the standard for the last three or 4 years. And in order for this to remain, we would have to put a specific plan in place. What we are saying is that it doesn't meet the threshold anymore, and it will wrap into the wider Wychavon air quality plan. So, but again, any technical questions, Mark is here.
And Councillor Beverley Hardman, I understand you're seconding this again.
Yeah, I'd like to second this, although I do debate about certain areas being the crown jewels. I think we all think our own areas are. Just to say this is really important for us, all our health, it affects cancer, asthma, heart attacks. So I'm really pleased that we managed to get this area being air quality okay, and they will carry on testing as well. Thank you.
I think everybody knows that the crown jewels of Wychavon are stored in a safe in Vic's office. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this item? No. In that case, we'll move on to the budget process, which is Councillor Emma Stokes to propose.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Happy to propose the recommendation in the papers. And I would just like to point out that I'm particularly pleased in the engagement with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the budget process, the budget scrutiny team getting together and working through this particular process. Particularly pleased. That worked very well last year, and I'm hoping it can come forward again this year. Also, I will point out that following the underspend in the previous year, we have put markers in place that should there be any significant changes in the budget, I let you know at an earlier stage than at the year end. So that was taken up, I think, from Charles Tucker when he mentioned that to me at the previous meeting. So happily to propose the recommendations on page 32. Thank you. 32.
Thank you. And Councillor Dan Birch, the second.
Happy to second, and fingers crossed it leads to a unanimously supported budget when it comes to council.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on that? No. In that case, finally, Norton and Len... Oh, sorry, no, I'm missing one. Worcestershire Parkway Infrastructure Enabling Application, and that's not easy to say. Deputy Leader, I understand you wish to propose this.
Chairman, thank you. Yes, this is the £1.5 million for us to go forward with Worcestershire Parkway, or now as we will continue to refer to it as Wychavon Town, to be very proactive with us actually putting the application in forward. What this actually does, it demonstrates to the inspectorate and everybody, we've always said about Wychavon Town that it will be infrastructure led, and this demonstrates completely that, to ensure that it's the infrastructure plan that's going in first of all, to make sure that it will always be exactly as we said, and that is infrastructure led. We will recoup all of this money back through the Section 106 as the planning applications then come through the system. So I very much have pleasure in proposing this recommendation.
Thank you. And Councillor Rob Adams, to a second. Sorry, Councillor Middleborough, in that case. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong note here.
Well, we can do a sort of double act on it, but I agree with everything the Deputy Leader has said. This is about coordination and to ensure that infrastructure comes smoothly as and when it's actually required. We're ahead of the game by doing this, and we do hope that with Parkway or Wychavon Town, we want it referred to by the government as Wychavon Town, that government start to come up with some of the dib-dobs to support this before too long.
Wychavon Garden City has a nicer ring to it. Finally, Norton and Lenchwick Parish Council loan for the purchase of land. Councillor Emma Stokes.
Yes, thank you. Councillors will know that this actually went as part of an exempt paper report to the Executive Committee, and whilst it was in private session, the ward member and the Executive Board had good discussion regarding this, and unfortunately, if we do want to ask questions on this, we will need to go into private session now. However, if you will just accept the recommendation from me as worded on page 34, then we don't need to go into private session, and I have spoken to the local councillor on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Middleborough down to second this one, or should it be Councillor Rob Adams? I may have got it the wrong way round this time. Councillor Middleborough?
I'm pleased to second it. I hope I'm sort of doing it as a surrogate for Councillor Craig Reeves, actually, the local member. So if he'll give me the pleasure of seconding it, your thoughts are in our mind when I do that.
Okay, any comments on any of those? No, in that case, we're going to take the recommendations as a block. All those in favour of approving the recommendations from the Exec Board?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, so we now go on to reports of Chairman, starting with the Executive Board, over to the Deputy Leader.
Chairman, thank you. In the absence of the Leader and as the Deputy Leader of the Council, I can confirm that there has been one meeting of the Executive Board since the last ordinary meeting of Council on the 23rd of July. This meeting of the Executive Board took place on the 24th of September 2025. We considered an update to the Contaminated Land Inspection Strategy, the revocation of the Air Quality Management Area in Wychbold, our Empty Home Strategy 2025 to 2030, the 26-27 budget process, the allocation of almost £18,000 of Section 106 monies to Ashton Underhill Parish Council for an under fives and toddlers play area at the recreation ground, the usual periodic write-off of debts, Wychavon Town infrastructure enabling application, and a potential loan to Norton and Lenchwick Parish Council for the purchase of land. The items in respect of contaminated land, air quality, budget process, Wychavon Town and Norton and Lenchwick were all subject to this council's approval, which has now been given. In respect of our empty home strategy, we have launched this in line with our promises. Empty homes is a major issue within housing, which many councils are ignoring. Members may have seen news articles in the BBC website calling for action. We are one of the only councils of our size to have a dedicated officer in post. We are leading by working with owners by consensus. Other councils are now seeking our advice on that basis. We are not only tackling the issues, but investing in the opportunity to revitalise areas whilst bringing much needed housing back into use. We are looking to do further more on this, so watch this space while we continue to deliver on our promises. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? No? Okay, in that case, we move on to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Homer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start calling it the esteemed ONS Committee, given the esteem that it's been given in tonight's debates. Since the last council meeting, the ONS Committee have met once. At that meeting on the 1st of October, the lion's share of the agenda was given to the Development Management Service update from Kieran Power. The Executive Board member was also present, and I'm grateful for both of them giving up their time on that evening. Kieran's update covered the Development Management Action Plan, the 5-year housing land supply, planning enforcement, ongoing improvement works, general performance and of the service and its current challenges. Kieran's presentation and report submitted to the committee beforehand went into great detail and gave members a solid understanding. For the remainder of the meeting, we reviewed the Wychavon Performance Report 25-26 Q1, heard from members of the committee who had attended our Housing Association Partner Residents meetings and had found them extremely useful and insightful, and we considered the Executive Board's forward plan. As part of that, it was agreed that ahead of the next formal update to Council on the LGR and a letter being sent to Government, ONS will have a further opportunity to review the technical detail around the proposal at a special workshop on the 11th of November. A subsequent note on the back of that workshop will be then sent to members as a follow-up ahead of the special council meeting on the 19th of November. Lastly, the membership for this year's Budget Scrutiny Group has now been finalised, and I'm grateful to those members who have put themselves forward for that important piece of work. Our next meeting is on the 3rd of December with the agenda to follow, and I remind all members they are very welcome to attend the meeting. Thank you.
Any questions for that? No? In that case, we'll move on to Planning Committee. Councillor Nick Wright.
Thank you, Chair. We've had 2 committee meetings since the last council meeting in July. We've considered 10 applications, ranging from new developments to solar farm batteries and extensions, etc. We have another meeting tomorrow, just to remind members to appear at 9 o'clock if possible for site visits, and 1 o'clock for the committee meeting. It is, planning decisions are not easy at the moment. It's not particularly joyful to be part of a committee. Joyful, probably not quite the right word, but you've probably seen from the news list in Eccleshall having 1,500 houses and the problems they have there, and also Bromsgrove and most local planning authorities. So we're not on our own when we haven't got a housing supply. So we look forward to the SWDPR being ratified and adopted. And most planning authorities don't actually have a plan to adopt, so we have got nearly got there. So I would like to thank the committee and those who have recently joined for their endeavours and their input into the meetings, which is absolutely vital. And whilst I'm at it, I should, as in Vic's newsletter, I should say and applaud the Planning Department who are shortlisted for the Royal Town Planning Institute and National Planning Authority of the Year Award. They're one of 10. So I hope they do well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Not seeing any hands go up for questions, so we will move on to the Licensing Committee. Councillor Chris Day.
Thank you, Chairman. There has not been a meeting of the full Licensing Committee since the last report. However, there have been 5 meetings of the Licensing Subcommittee during the period, and my thanks go to all members and officers who have taken part in those hearings and for the considerable time and diligence that they've shown during them. Those subcommittees considered 14 private hire vehicle licence applications, of which 9 were granted and 5 were deferred, 4 private hire driver licences, all of which were granted, and 1 premises licence application for an event that was titled Dubs in the Middle, which I have to say was a new thing for me, but was effectively about the meeting of VW camper vans. Apparently they have a natural tendency to flock together on occasions, and they will be doing so shortly. We did put one condition on that, and that was that any singing that would be done inside a tent. Thank you.
Any questions or comments on that? No? You've never heard of Dubs in the Middle before? Well, there you go. Okay. Moving on then to the Member Conduct Committee, Councillor Robbie Raphael.
Thank you, Chairman. The Member Conduct Committee has met only once since the last council meeting. The monitoring officer gave us an update on the progress of past and current complaints and explained that there are 3 complaints currently being looked at, but none were live investigations. The principal item on our agenda was withdrawn at that, so is no longer deemed a necessary item for us to determine. Our next scheduled meeting is the 9th of February, and that concludes, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm just not seeing any hands go up for questions or comments, so we move on to the thrilling update on the Audit Committee from Councillor Hardman.
Yeah, sarcasm is seldom wasted, is it, Chairman? We met on the 26th of September, and indeed we did have a thrilling meeting, because before that we had an informal meeting where we did an in-depth investigation as to cyber security, and the bit that I took away is their motto, not if, but when. And I'd remind all members to ensure that their cyber security training is up to date. We then moved on to review the risk management policy, which Neil has had considerable impact into it and adopted that. And then we followed that with a mid-year review of the risk management and the reds and greens. And finally, we concluded the meeting with the internal audit progress report, which we found to be satisfactory because internal audit is catching up. The next meeting is on the 21st of November, and I make an appeal. You'll all be welcome.
Any questions or comments on that? I would just say that as a former member of the Audit Committee, I found it absolutely fascinating, and cybersecurity in particular was one of the things I took a particular interest in. So I am glad that that is still being progressed, because it is one of the key aspects of our risk factor. But anyway, we have a question at the back. Sorry, who was that? Councillor Franks.
Yeah, so it was more of a comment. It was actually just to say that the cyber security team that we met were absolutely fantastic. They're really on the ball and know what they're doing. And I think we all left feeling very reassured. So I just want to pass on my thanks to them. And I'm sure the other committee members were thinking the same thing, that we appreciate the work they're doing, because it is a case of when and not if. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, that's the end of reports of chairman. We now move on to questions from members of the council, and we have some of those, starting with Councillor Liz Thurier.
Thank you. The Times recently reported huge differences in the numbers of young people going to university across the country. Whilst academic achievement is not the only measure of success, the article also highlighted the opportunity index for our area as low. Young people were restricted in their ability to get educational opportunities, training and jobs because of our low connectivity. Poor public transport was cited as a major barrier preventing local young people from experiencing opportunities. How is the Council increasing opportunities for our young people, and what more will be done going forward? Thank you.
Thank you. I have down here the response to be given by Councillor Rob Adams / Councillor Dan Birch. I'm not sure whether that means you hadn't yet decided which one is going to, or whether you both are. That you, Councillor Adams, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to deal with the first part, and then Councillor Birch rather is going to deal with the question Liz proposed there, or put forward. So this is in reference to, has anybody actually read this article on this at all? You brave man, Dan. I stopped with the help of my son, till about 2:30 this morning trying to go through it, and there we are. There wasn't actually a mention of the name Wychavon, which I was looking for, so there we are. So the response that has been put together for me, and I agree with, The article does not directly reference the whole of Wychavon as being low, although it is concerning that 6 wards of the 42 fell below 40% uptake. Some of these wards are areas with high levels of deprivation, so there is an obvious link between income levels and university uptake, probably accelerated by the cost of living crisis and the increasingly tuition fees. However, public transport provision is relatively good in the Wychavon wards. I know some of you would disagree with that, but that's where we are. Within the Wychavon wards with the lowest university uptake, suggesting that there is a range of reasons behind this, which is also reflected nationally. There are also missing data sets behind the articles, and if you read this, there is missing data in there. Data sets behind the article that would allow us to view of the whole wider picture. Because as the councillor has already indicated, academic achievements is only one measure of success, and the incredible of the work-based model of qualifications, such as apprenticeships, are increasingly popular. In Wychavon, residents can access a university locally in Worcester, Birmingham and Gloucester. So although we are aware of a large number of school leavers are restricted by the lack of direct transport options and lower numbers of car drivers than in the past, there should not be as much of a physical barrier to access. Universities are also aware of this and actively seek to put mitigation in place. Dan?
Thank you, Councillor Adams. So just touching on the point made around opportunity. Now we are very lucky to have Leonie Selke at Wychavon District Council, who's of course our social mobility officer, who does an incredibly good job of engaging with the schools. As a school governor, having spoken to the heads, the pastoral team, they all speak incredibly highly of her. And the reason for that is she works so closely with the schools in providing the levels of support that the schools need and the pupils need, not what we as Wychavon believe they need, which are two very different things often. So in terms of some of the things we put in place, we offer our social mobility grants, and they can be used for a whole host of things. To give some examples, they've been used to provide additional support to students through counselling services or setting up quiet spaces. They've been used to buy gym memberships for some students who were struggling with self-esteem issues and wanted to be able to get exercise but wouldn't necessarily be able to afford a full gym membership. And they've been used to provide as much support to schools and external clubs as possible. And they're open to be applied for by all sorts of organisations. So we do a lot there in terms of enticing kids to come into schools, to get a good education, because of course the better an education we can provide within Wychavon, the more opportunities our young people will have. When it comes to connectivity, this is of course an issue. This is of course an issue nationwide in terms of when you have rural areas like ours, and it's the main reason why so often we oppose planning applications. If you are to build developments in rural countryside, then developers and councils can't really then be surprised when those people struggle to get somewhere, because there isn't necessarily the infrastructure to support those housing developments. But ultimately, we do have relatively good connectivity compared to other areas. We continue to support Worcestershire County Council in their apprenticeships and skills. We have our economy and skills team in-house. There is always more we can do. We have our communities team who are going out, engaging with young people, understanding what they need, what they want, how we can best support them. But there is always more we can do. And should you wish to take it away further, I'm more than happy to meet with you, either separately or with Leonie, to discuss what more we can put in place to try and support young people to have the best opportunities possible.
Okay. Councillor Thuria, do you wish to come back on that?
No, thank you very much. One of my major concerns was the fact that the Euston Further Education College has closed and is now in Pershore, and as I understand it, it's not a free bus service, and I just wondered if there's only one bus a day. What about the people that are only going part-time and that sort of thing?
We can we have, of course, now got an expansion to the Worcestershire On Demand service, which is, of course, a useful addition to have. But in terms of providing buses to schools, that's a county council function and something that we can take away to the county council and look at whether there's any additional support that they can put in place to provide more support to get more buses around the areas where we have got higher education facilities to support students.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Ian Edwards, I believe you have something you wish to say at this point.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the Wychavon College point, Wychavon College do offer free bus service to their students to Pershore, and Pershaw's start has been delayed half an hour. So they've got more time to get there, so it's not the rush that you may expect.
Okay, right. Okay, in that case, we'll move on to the next question, which is from Councillor Charles Tucker.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The Council has participated in the Climate Action Scorecards system since 2021. New results for 2025 have now been published. While our score, overall score that is, has improved since 2023 from 35% to 40%, three aspects of the scores have gone backwards, namely buildings and heating, -1, transport -7, and collaboration and engagement -6. Will the Council therefore bring forward a report showing how we can use the scorecards to target and improve our climate actions? Thank you.
And Councillor Beverley Harpen to respond to this.
Thank you. I'm glad that other people have also read those scorecards. I've read them last year and the last couple of years. We are aware of the climate action score results. The scores and feedback provided for the Council have been assessed and are feeding into our Intelligently Green plan. At the next carbon meeting, we will assess the scores and look at how it fits into the Intelligent Green plan. And I expect action will result to help improve our Intelligent Green plan. The climate action scorecards are from a Climate Energy UK. They say on their website, by holding councils accountable for their climate actions and collaborating at a national level, they seek to encourage and influence local climate action at a scale and pace. The Climate Energy UK scorecards are not identical to our Intelligent Green plan, but have similarities and differences that are useful for generating ideas. And I'd like to remember that we voted for this Intelligent Green plan, we all here stand by. There are some results there, like we don't feel the example of which reward scheme have been incorporated properly and also analysed. And other things like purchasing renewable energy at the Civic Centre will increase our building and heating. So as I already said, at the next carbon panel meeting, we'll look at these scorecards, and I expect that actions will come through this review.
Councillor Tucker, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, Chairman. Well, I'm grateful to Ms Hardman for that answer. I think that taking it to the carbon reduction panel initially is a very good very good opportunity for the proper discussion on it. But I would also like to see the information about the scorecards being more widely disseminated within the council, which is why I asked if it could be taken as a report from the executive board. I do think we need to widen knowledge, but I welcome the idea of using these to help us to judge our Intelligently Green plan and hopefully decide on some actions which we can take as a result, because the scorecards are fairly widely acknowledged and accepted now, and they do give good support to councils in the actions they want to take. So I think it's well worth the council understanding them in the wider context, as well as simply on the carbon reduction panel. Thank you.
Councillor Harpen, do you have a
Yes, I think we work to the Intelligent Green Plan. If we want to change and upgrade that, we do that. But that's our plan that we all voted on in council. So our Intelligent Green Plan is what we should be working for, and we decide what that plan is. If it agrees with everybody else, great, but we decide our own plan. We work for our residents. We agree what we want for our residents, and that's what we should work for. Like I say, if you want to debate it and want to look at changing it in the carbon panel, we'd look at it. But we work on our plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from Councillor Angie Crump.
Thank you, Chair. As a member of the now known as the Elite Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I understand the importance with the We Are Wychavon and how we scrutinise that and all the importance of that. So my question is, given the significant weight we place on our residents' survey feedback, could we consider extending the response period due to the suspension of the Wychavon Facebook page? I also have a slight addition to that in the fact that our parish councils, a lot of them, they only meet once every other month. So again, trying to get it out to them as well. Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Leader, to respond to that.
Chairman, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Crump, for your question. It's important to remember that Facebook is just one of many different communication channels that we use. If all our Facebook posts were to reach every follower, and if every follower was a Wychavon resident, we would still only be reaching about 6% of the district's population through this channel, which I think is a bit of an eye-opener, really, for all of us. Our Facebook posts only generated 121 responses out of the 1,458 that we received in response to last year's survey. Our Facebook adverts helped generate 297 responses, so Facebook isn't as important in terms of generating responses as people may believe it to be. Our email alerts list remains the channel we generated most responses from, 790. So far, we have already have 656 completed responses, which is above the 439 we received at this time last year. We'll always promote the survey in a variety of ways, including printed, digital, and a variety of social media platforms. We still have access to other social media platforms and will be using organic and paid-for options to reach as many people as possible. We don't see any need to extend the survey at this point because it could affect the comparability with previous year's results, but we will keep it under review.
Councillor Crump, do you want to come back on that response at all?
Yeah, I'd just like to come back and say if everybody could spread the word as councillors, that would be very much appreciated. And if they can get it out to their parish councils, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Leader, do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you. Absolutely echo that. All of us with our own councillor social media accounts, obviously that we'll be sharing that if we haven't done already. But I think this, the question or the response, if you like, to the question really highlights the great work that our team do in the communications to get the engagement that we have from our residents. As we know, we receive great engagement from our residents, and that's due to the great work that we do, that residents primarily, want to tell us how good a job that we're doing. So absolutely, yes, let's spread it around very much to our parish councils, but it's very good to know all the different avenues that we're using to do that.
Thank you. And then we finally come on to a question from Councillor Dan Boatwright Green.
Thank you, Chair. Affordable rents properties, so those that are 80% of the market value, are being advertised alongside social rent properties to those on the social housing register. In some reported cases, the houses are being advertised without the expected monthly rental costs, meaning residents feel trapped into taking the property with the higher rents because of fear that they will be removed from the housing register. Can the council commit to ensuring no property, social or affordable, is advertised on our systems to those on the social housing register without the full details of rent and council tax, so the residents can make their own affordability decisions?
Thank you. Councillor Rickdella to give a response.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the question. I think, firstly, I'll just clarify that rents in social housing sector are overset at a social rent level, normally around 50% of market rent, or affordable rent level capped at 80% of market rent. Rents are calculated by the register provider using a government-set formula, and both types of rent level are advertised on the Housing for You site, and for those on our housing register. Adverts on the Housing for You are posted by our registered providers, who are required to include a range of information, including weekly or monthly rent. This is displayed for all properties, and it's not possible to advertise an advert on it without it. The team have checked today, and there are no adverts showing without weekly or monthly rent. But if you have got some evidence, please do send it through. While council tax band is not always included. This will be discussed alongside other running costs such as utility bills and any eligibility for reduction or exemptions during the affordability check that is carried out for new tenants before sign-up. I can confirm that nobody would have their banding reduced because they've not bid or refused the offer of property on the basis of affordability. That has been verified by an affordability check. If a resident is unsure about affordability of a property or whether or not a property refusal would deem reasonable in line with the council's adopted allocation policy, I would recommend they speak to the housing officer, who would always be happy to help. In addition to this, I just wanted to add that the team are working on improvements to the way we communicate information about the housing options, as we recognise it can be very complicated. This would include video guides to applying to join the housing register and bidding on properties. We appreciate how stressful time it is when you're bidding for properties, and the team are always willing to help.
Councillor Bowack-Green, you wish to come back on that?
Yeah, I do. I probably have an endless list of social housing questions, and one of the reasons I do is because as I dig into this, I'm finding more and more not necessarily issues, but confusions, points where people are unsure, where residents are really struggling to understand exactly what it is that we are trying to communicate to them. As somebody who I consider to be relatively intelligent, I know that might be a bit of a push, I am finding it a struggle to go through this and to make how this could be understood. I think it might be time for us to bring in more people to actually understand this, because I could keep going. This is literally, I've got a question at every council meeting for the next probably 3-4 years. So is it time that we possibly sit down and actually start looking at why it is that I have so many questions?
I'm always happy to answer your questions, Dan. Don't worry about that. But no, I think if you're talking about communication, I think that is an area we need to improve on in terms of how we communicate how residents apply and what their rights are and all that sort of thing. I think that's a very valid point. I think, and like I said, the team are working on ways we can improve that, but always open to hearing your ideas and happy to discuss that further with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your questions and all the answers. We now come on to the final item on our agenda, which is the council debate. And Councillor Robbie Raphael was selected by random ballot to present it, and it's going to be all about strategic authority and devolution, and we may well discuss who will be the new Metro Mayor of Greater Wychavon. Over to you, Councillor Raphael.
Thank you, Chairman. I have no intention of standing, that's for sure. Chairman, I put my name forward for this debate last year, and had I been chosen, my topic would have been along the lines of parish councils, strengthen or scrap. I would have deliberately chosen this binary question to force members to take a side. While I was chairman of the council, I had the honour to visit every one of Wychavon's parishes and communities to commemorate this council's 50th anniversary. This tour of the district inevitably took me to the heart of the workings of parish-level councils, and it soon became quite apparent that most of our communities are vibrant, forward-thinking with a clear sense of their own destiny and future. They interact well with Wychavon and generally respect this council, particularly our officers who seem to know every inch of this district. A year on, with Wychavon itself being abolished and unitary authorities being forced upon us, the notion of scrapping parish and community councils is quite unthinkable. But it does make me question how our local communities will engage with these larger, more distant unitary and strategic authorities. And with an elected mayor with immense powers to provide local funding and direct policy with little deference to this area's hamlets, villages and relatively small towns, how can we support and prepare our local communities for life after Wychavon?
Thank you for a very thought-provoking question. Who would like to kick us off with the first response or comment? Councillor Birch.
Thank you. To me, I think one of the key areas where, when we talk about Wychavon's 50-year existence, with the exception of few in this room, the majority of councillors have came and went over those 50 years, and the makeup of this room is very, very different. But if you look then to our officers, we've got officers that have been involved in this council for decades, who've been here nearing the very early days. And it's those officers that over the years have kept Wychavon running, have kept Wychavon going, have put in place the policies and requests of numerous councils and executives over the years. And I think it's important that as the new unitary is formed, we look at how the staffing and makeup of the new unitary authority is made. We want to try and preserve as much of the people who have an understanding and knowledge of our area, who know the community groups, who know the parish councils, who know the issues, the successes, who are able to tell you the history in terms of why we didn't do this or why we did the other. And I think it's important that we have an active involvement, and the leadership team at every district council has an active involvement in the recruitment and hiring of whatever the new makeup authority looks like, so that we are able to preserve not just members but officers who understand how to make a council work in this area and are able to have a direct impact in whatever comes next.
Councillor Emma Stokes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing this forward, Robbie. It is one of the questions when we go back to possibly, well, not quite 12 months ago, when the idea of devolution and the idea of a unitary authority was foisted upon us. And I immediately ran down the route of economies of scale. One larger unitary would absolutely be the one and only way forward. What really came out is the consultation and the engagement that we had with our communities. And it really did show how much this local area is valued by the community. And that's one of the reasons why I significantly changed from one unitary to 2 unitaries, because I absolutely listened to the community. That's another reason I sit on Evesham Town Council. I absolutely believe in the community. And the community should feed upwards. We should never feed downwards. And I think that's really what we need to start to make sure that the town councils, the parish councils, actually take notice of their own community engagement that we've just done, identify what the local community wishes, and actually pick it up and run with it to ensure that we take their community wishes forward. And I think it's an opportunity to do that at a local level. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rickdella. You had your finger up? Oh, were you just, well, in that case, we will go on to... you were obviously scratching an itch. In that case, we will go on to Councillor Boat-Green.
So on the mayor front, obviously this is a bit more of a challenge because it could involve Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin. It could involve Herefordshire. All of us in Worcestershire, there's the shrugging, we know, there's Warwickshire, there's Gloucestershire. I immediately want to kind of ask the question, how do I Wychavon Gloucestershire? Because I feel like that could be some kind of like quite fun event. But I think the big problem we have when we're looking at those metro mayors is they're so distant. They don't make any sense. And I always make the joke about the Wecker mayor. What the hell is a Wecker mayor? I mean, you know, they keep talking about Wecker like it's a real place. But, you know, South Gloucestershire is not the same as Bristol. And we know that it isn't because in the 90s they broke up and they still don't like talking to each other. So I feel with a lot of this, it just feels very alien. And I think it's one of those that as it develops, a lot of us are going to have to try to put our input in as best we can and hope that it makes as much sense as it can. But I think it would be very difficult to argue it's much more than we'll probably be fudging that bit. I think it's going to be a very difficult challenge. In terms of the unitary, the key thing for me is making sure all councils are dissolved, making sure there is no continuing authority. We need to make sure that the county council is not the continuing authority. The reason for that is if the county council is the continuing authority, then basically we take up what they do and we integrate into it. And I'm saying this as a county councillor, I don't trust that council at all. And we need to fight for that Because if you want to Wychavon, what comes next, that means we need to be starting from scratch and on the ground, and we need to be building upwards. We do not need a county council where it's telling us and dictating to us exactly what should be happening. And I know that my strength of feeling will be far stronger than most, but it is a council that I've always had issues with, regardless of who's in power there, because of the way in which it operates. And so I would say now all councils dissolved, and as all of us who are county councillors, we need to fight for that so that we can build upwards, not be told how it looks.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkins.
Wychavon is one of the best run councils in the country, and it has been an honour and a privilege to come right in at the end and get some of the immense praise for having been part of it. Over the past 2 years I've been a member here, I have seen what makes this council so amazing. The passion, ethics and experience of its members and officers. While residents and community groups will naturally play a key part in influencing the new Metro mayors, I believe the most critical people in influencing the direction of the unitary will be the officers and us councillors, as, while yes, the government itself will be further away, we will be just as close. Ready and willing to act as a bridge between our community groups and the authority generally, as well as the mayor more specifically. However, not all of us district councillors are county councillors, so we'll find ourselves with responsibilities we are not familiar with. I would thus say that the best way we can influence a unitary authority is to train our councillors who plan to run in it with the skills they will need to understand and effectively execute these new responsibilities that they will have on behalf of their residents. Things like highways and adult social care, to name a few. We are all ready to bring our passion and we are all ready to bring our amazing ethics. And I think it's important that we give those who are currently lacking it the experience needed for a unitary so that we can best influence and Wychavonize the new unitary authority and carry forward the best bits from what we have now to what comes next.
Thank you. Councillor Charlie Homer.
Thank you, Chairman. I just think we need to go back to complete basics, and actually the problem that I think we face as a country, let alone as a new unitary authority, is actually that we need strong representation. And at the moment we stand on a precipice where people don't want to go into politics. They don't want to put their name forward. They don't want to be representatives because they fear what that means, because the discourse in our country has become so toxic around it. We at Wychavon have always been very good at cooperating, working across the political spectrum and coming up with consensus. The fact is, the most political we've got tonight is mentioning I don't want to get political. We are sensitive to each other. We all work with each other. We can all chat and have a coffee before we come in here. We are not at each other's necks. And unfortunately, I don't think that's the case across lots of councils, and we don't have to look too far away to see that either. So I think one of the things, and I remember when I first stood for Harvington and Norton a long time ago now, and I stood uncontested, and at the time it had to be explained to me that you're not going to stand and you're not going to, there's no one's going to vote for you because no one stood against you. And it was a big piece of work that we did then at Wychavon to sort of understand, because there was quite a few uncontested seats at that election. And I think that it's hard to put it into words, but I do think that we can set an example here about how culturally we can work together across the political spectrum to bring consensus, to make sure that we have robust representation, but that we all work together. We may come at it from slightly different perspectives, but we all want the same thing, and that is for our residents to have the best possible opportunities, the best possible environments to live in, and we've achieved it at Wychavon. So there's definitely lessons that can be made, and I agree with all the sentiments that's been put forward by other speakers. But I do believe that we have to, unfortunately, I'm aware of lots of parish councils that are not fully representative because people don't wish to put themselves forward. And that's because of the toxicity around politics and those things at the moment. And that's something that I think we could counter here. I think we need to counter it as a country. That's my bigger concern, is making sure that we are represented, frankly, from the very first start. And also, ultimately, when we talk about unitary and new responsibilities for new councillors, etc., what and how that unitary operates may discount certain people from standing. I have a full-time job. I have 2 young children. My wife often laments the amount of time I give to the council. But it's, and those are the things, those are the other challenges that we have to come and make sure that we counter as well when we bring up the new unitary. But again, Wychavon's always done a very good job of making sure that we are flexible, having daytime meetings, evening meetings, etc. I think those are all things that we can take forward from Wychavon, and I hope we do, and I think we will.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Wright.
Yeah. I'm in agreement with everybody, whatever anybody said about this, but I think from Robbie Rafal's thought initially was preparing our local communities to be fit and ready to influence the mayor and the unitary council. I personally, speaking on behalf of parish councils, don't think they've got a clue actually of what's involved at the moment. I'm sure that it has been discussed, and Vic would probably know the answer to all this, but from two parish councils that I'm a clerk for, frankly, apart from knowing that this council wishes there be two unitary authorities, there is really no other further movement in their thought processes, even with the help of the officers holding a council day. So there's a lot of work to be done to get local parish councils involved with this, and I would suggest that, and we've got very little time to do it. That struck me all along, that we're looking at a year or two, which is no time at all. And although people don't put themselves up for local councils on the whole, this gives them an opportunity to be probably more important in their local communities. So I would ask the council to hold more evenings perhaps for local councils, or to get more involved on a one-to-one basis with councillors, so they know what they've got to do when unitary authorities come along. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just invoke Chairman's privilege and waffle briefly for a moment myself. I said in my Chairman's announcements at the beginning about the Wychavon Community Star Awards that I've done 4 of so far. Now, whenever you go to an award like that, there's always kind of a lot of chit-chat in the background while you're waiting for everything to come together and do the stuff with the comms team and the photos and everything. And the one thing I was asked, all 4 of them, was local government reorganisation. Everybody wanted to know what my thoughts were. Well, not everybody, but at least all of the 4. There were people there who wanted to know what my thoughts were on Wychavon going forward and being converted into a unitary authority. So people out there do know. They are engaging with this. Maybe not as much as we feel they should, but certainly people are. But anyway, I will shut up. Charles Tucker next.
Thank you. I think I fully accept the suggestions which have been put forward here tonight, and do agree with them. Just as a comment, I'm afraid the more I hear about the proposals, the devolution proposals, the more they seem to be top-down, and so far not just down to the mayor, but down to the unitary council, and then down to a structure being imposed to consult local people. There was an interesting meeting last night of the Wychavon Calc, where a number of these issues were discussed, and it came home very clearly to me that if we followed the government's lead, it would be setting up new groups, local forums within the area of the Unitary Council to consult local people. And there was no suggestion about how parish councils actually integrate with that, or what the function of a parish council would be, except to maybe send along representatives to those local forums. And I think that is entirely the wrong way to go about it. It is necessary, really, that that's reversed, and that the formation of such bodies, and there is a need for them, I call them whatever you like, local consultative groups, forums, or clusters of parish councils, or whatever. It needs to come from them, and it needs to come from communities, and work upwards rather than downwards. And I think if Wychavon has any opportunity to make that point in its statement in next month on its proposals for local government reorganisation, I think that's very important to do, rather than simply accepting that we will have to make arrangements for consultation forums in some way that government suggests. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Leader.
Chairman, thank you. I think it's quite pertinent that it's this debate that has been brought by Councillor Raphael, because if you don't mind me saying, I actually think that Councillor Raphael epitomises community and service. And I actually think that with few exception, all of us here, very much taking Councillor Homer's point, the amount of time that we put into the role that we have. And I honestly think that with very few exceptions, we all do the role that we do because we care so passionately and deeply about our communities and representing them. And the situation that we now find ourselves in, that the government are dictating to us, is the complete opposite to what we want and everything that we speak about with our communities, because it is very much top down. You know, we want to talk about everything coming from our communities going up. But I mean, we've even had the resolutions in council as to what we want with the South Worcestershire, but we still don't know whether we're going to get anything remotely looking like that. So that's the challenge that we have, is that whatever the work that we do, we don't know whether we're going to be allowed to go ahead with that, or what the situation is going to be. And certainly, you know, I always insist on the language that all of us should use. It isn't just Wychavon that's going, it's Wychavon and county that are going. There is no question that county is taken over all of those responsibilities. But the question that Councillor Raphael put to us is how we prepare our communities. And there's a large part of this that I don't believe for a second that the government has considered, because I genuinely don't think that they care about the communities and what's on the ground. And that is, if we look at parish councils, our parish councils in the main, if you take away the town councils, predominantly parish councils, the majority of them are carrying vacancies, and so they don't have the capacity and in a lot of cases the capability to deal with additional responsibilities that may be then placed upon them. So if you think that there is going to be a gap or a void that's going to be formed that somebody needs to pick up, very much our work needs to be, as far as we can, to prepare those people and to prepare our communities and encourage our communities to get involved, whatever that looks like. If it's somebody that doesn't want to stand for election or doesn't want to serve on the parish council because of what it looks like, you know, maybe it does look like an episode of Vicar of Dibley, and to be fair, some of our parish councils, you know, can look like that. Everybody wants to do the right thing, but it is about the capacity and the capability, and for the whole time that we, as people who care passionately about our communities and serve in those communities, I think we need to do everything and anything that we can do to prepare our communities to be able to have that strength wherever possible, to be able to be community upwards, and that is the preparation that we need to do.
Thank you. Councillor Neil Franks.
Thank you, Chair. I think it would be probably no surprise to anyone that I'm completely against the formation of the strategic authorities and an overall mayor. I do believe it adds a democratic deficit compared to what we've got now. It will become more political and then therefore antagonise and be even more divisive to our communities in the long term. I think going back to the question, you know, how to prepare our communities, I think education of our residents is definitely the key to this. We've got to make them aware of what these changes mean, and I think as a council, be honest about that. The mayor will be more distant, and that's not for the benefit of our communities. And that if our communities and residents don't sort of fight through representatives and our parish and town councils for more local decision making by the mayor to say, you know, we don't want you making the decisions. What we want you to do is we want you to come and talk to us and let us make the decisions. Otherwise, we will have a democracy that will be done to our residents rather than by our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands going up. Oh, Councillor Hardman, sorry, I didn't see your...
I would love to see Wychavon have an officer or some officers to go into schools and explain what we're going to have, maybe in a year's time when we know what's going to happen, so they know if we're going to have a mayor, what a mayor does, if they are going to be unitary, what we're going to do, how it actually works, because also a lot of people don't understand how we work. And I think it'd be helpful if people did understand what we did and how we worked together. That would encourage people to get more engaged. If we started with schools, then hopefully that would go into families. Because I heard that some people go into council and have no idea the hours they're meant to be doing council members. Even people who are meant to know about politics don't understand what we always do. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, I'm not seeing any more fingers going up. So we're over to you next, Councillor Middleburgh, you to speak in your role as exec member for this particular subject, and then it will be over to Councillor Raphael to summarise as leader of the debate.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And I think it's been a good debate, actually. We've had the word waffle and soggy mentioned earlier in the evening. I don't think it's been waffly and soggy at all, this debate. And there's people who I often don't quite agree with, but we do sort of work together. And I can say Charles Tucker, to me, has been the star of this evening, because what he's picked up, of course, is that the government want a mayor who is all-powerful and, as we've been told, all-distant. And that is not good for local democracy. And I think, as Councillor Robbie Raphael was talking earlier on, he was talking about how will engagement exist in the future, the heart of working and being vibrant within the communities, and life after Wychavon. So I think we've got something here. We don't want the government telling us how to do things within the communities of Wychavon. And I think we've got a role as a council to actually do things to make life and the future ethos of Wychavon continue into the new arrangements. Our parish councils, I think, as we've just heard, they're a bit like the curate's egg up to a point, but actually they are going to be key, along with community groups that exist and the voluntary sector. And the mayor is going to have lots of money, actually, and he's going to be telling, or she's going to be telling, what we ought to do. And I think lower down in terms of the structure, we need to have communities sorted out or being aware of what they need to do in the point of employment, in the point of law, contracts, joint services. I mean, say we've talked about neighbourhood, the government's talked about neighbourhood groups. I think they are, it's perhaps an undemocratic way that they're describing neighbourhood groups. But I tell you what, if we just go back a little bit, and actually, I don't think any of us go back quite as far as Councillor Birch was saying, the 50 years. But I can go back a few years, and I think Rob and a few others can go back in different places. I seem to remember we used to have something called the West Midlands Regional Assembly. And that was not quite, it wasn't democratic, and it didn't quite have the powers of the mayor, but it actually had money to give. And we in Wychavon were removed from the West Midlands Regional Assembly, or we seemed to be, because there was a county council there between us and them. And what did we do? We got people onto that assembly who were playing roles on the assembly. And what did we get? We got money out of that assembly to do things in our 3 towns mainly. And then they got abolished, and we got Advantage West Midlands. And I speak carefully about Advantage West Midlands because there's certainly one person in the room who knows more about it than I knew. But as a mere district councillor from Wychavon, I got on their finance committee. And you sort of push for these things, don't you? And it gave you an opening to influence how resources are going to be allocated, and actually coming back and saying to them, well, we can do a project like that. We can get that canal sorted in Droitwich, or bits of that canal sorted in Droitwich, and we can get things in the park in Pershaw done, and we can get things in the parks in Evesham done. And then when the floods came, we can actually do flood defence and other things poured out of it. So we do have a lot of expertise, and people in town and parish councils were involved in that. So what I want to say is we want to mobilise those cohorts below us district councillors who are going to go. And I do think that we can help achieve this through perhaps starting in the new year a series of summits involving community groups, town and parish councils and residents, along with CALC, because I think CALC have an important role to play, to facilitate, and we will facilitate it. Wychavon won't tell them how to do it, we will facilitate it to ensure that towns, villages and hamlets are prepared for the changes that are ahead of them. And that's not talking about the geography. It isn't about the talking of the geography. It's how to influence and be taken notice of by the mayor when they come about. And even if they don't come about, how to influence the new unitary authorities. And I'm quite certain our elite squad on ONS can play a role in that. Shouldn't have said that, should you? But yes. But it's all part of us being sensible, working together with our community and making sure that we're not stamped on by government and stamped on by a mayor in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, back to Councillor Raphael to sum up and...
Chairman, thank you very much indeed. I fully agree with most that's been said tonight. Dan Birch, you mentioned staff, absolutely right. Emma Stokes, community councils are essential, of course they are. I'm afraid I also agree with Nick Wright saying parish councils are unaware of what's likely to happen to them. Yeah, I sit on a parish council and we're absolutely unaware of what's likely to happen to us. I also, unfortunately, share, I'm not sure if it's the esteemed Charlie Homer or Dan Boatwright Green who used the word toxic. You're absolutely right. There is a toxic culture in some councils, not this one. And it's some, dare I say, parish councils. Charles Tucker, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You are the star tonight. You've used the expression communities must lead, absolutely bang on. And Deputy Leader, thank you for your very nice words. I will frame those particularly. But use the expression communities upward, and I think that is precisely what Wychavon's legacy should be, communities upward. Chairman, it gives me great pleasure to second Councillor Paul Middleton's proposal.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for that. The rules say that these council debates should last a maximum of 30 minutes. You'll be pleased to note that it has actually lasted 29 minutes and 3 seconds. So you've done an incredibly good job of speaking to the time limit. That does conclude this evening's meeting. Just a reminder, we are back next month for the special council meeting. So I'll see you all in about a month's time. Thank you.